Donald Trump has just revealed something that no one ever expected. A hidden truth about Moses' death, Satan and God, that will shock you. For centuries, the story of Moses has been told, but there's a dark, spiritual battle that's never been exposed until now. In a bold and exclusive revelation, Trump uncovers the mysterious forces behind Moses' passing, forces that involve not just human history, but a celestial confrontation between God and Satan. This isn't just a biblical story, it's a lesson in the eternal struggle for the soul of humanity. Get ready to uncover the secret that's been hidden for thousands of years, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see faith, power, and destiny forever. Why did Satan fight so fiercely for the body of Moses after his death? It's well known that Moses was deeply beloved by the nation of Israel, especially towards the end of his life and leadership. Like many great leaders, however, there came a time when God called his faithful servant home. The impact of his passing was so profound that it took an entire month for his people to mourn. For many, death marks finality. It signifies the end of one's earthly journey and sacrifices, and the beginning of something new. But in the case of Moses, there was something different, something extraordinary about his death. In the Bible, we read in Deuteronomy 34:6 that Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, in accordance with the word of the Lord, and he buried him in the valley, in the land of Moab. What makes this unique is that Moses is the only person in the Bible whom God personally buried. Yet, despite the importance of his death, no one knows where his grave is located. Why would God hide Moses' burial place? The answer is deeply significant. Satan was intent on finding Moses' body, and he had a plan. As he has done throughout history, Satan sought to lead God's people into idolatry, and he knew that if the Israelites found Moses' grave, they would inevitably turn it into a shrine. People would come from all over, venerating the place where Moses lay. Monuments would be built, rituals would be established, and worship would shift from God to the man Moses. It would become a place of sinful adulation, with the people worshiping the created rather than the Creator. This is the very essence of idolatry, when people elevate created things above God Himself. The Lord, understanding the potential danger, chose to hide Moses' tomb to prevent such worship. This decision was so crucial that it sparked an angelic battle in the heavenly realms. In the book of Jude, we learn that the archangel Michael contended with Satan over Moses' body. But why would Michael and Satan fight over a body? The Bible doesn't give us specific details, but the most likely reason is to prevent the Israelites from falling into idolatry. As Romans 1:25 warns, they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator. To safeguard Moses' body from becoming an object of idolatry, God entrusted Michael, his warrior angel, with the task of protecting it. The dispute between Michael and Satan over Moses' body highlights something profound. Even in such a moment of spiritual battle, Michael did not rebuke Satan directly. Instead, he simply said, "The Lord rebuke you." This is an important lesson. Michael, even though he was the highest-ranking angel, did not take matters into his own hands. He left judgment and rebuke to God alone. This teaches us an important lesson about vengeance and judgment. It reminds us that it is not our place to exact revenge or curse those who wrong us. That responsibility belongs to God. In summary, Satan fought to claim the body of Moses because he wanted to use it to tempt the Israelites into idolatry. By hiding Moses' tomb, God protected his people from the danger of worshiping the created rather than the Creator. And through this heavenly battle, we are reminded of the wisdom in leaving vengeance and judgment to God. After God concealed the burial place of Moses, this story carries a profound lesson about preserving the purity of worship. Moses, a servant deeply loved by God and used mightily to rescue the people of Israel, was never meant to be worshipped. He was simply a vessel in God's hands. This serves as a reminder that no human being, no matter how great, should ever take the place of God in our hearts. God alone deserves our worship, not the creations He has made. Satan, in his constant efforts to deceive, always seeks to draw people away from true worship by enticing them to worship anything other than God. Had Moses' body been found, it could have easily become a place of idol worship. People would have revered the grave, built shrines, and turned Moses into an object of adoration, shifting focus from God to the created. This is the very essence of idolatry, worshiping the created rather than the Creator, which is a sin that God condemns. Michael, the archangel, demonstrates a profound example of humility and submission to God's will. Though he possessed the power to defeat Satan, Michael didn't act on his own authority. Instead, he simply said, "The Lord rebuke you." This shows that even the highest-ranking angel did not take matters into his own hands, but rather trusted in God's judgment. Michael's words are a powerful reminder for us to let go of our desire for personal vengeance. When wronged, it's not our place to retaliate. We must leave judgment and justice to God, who will ensure fairness and righteousness. In our daily lives, we face temptations, people who try to lead us astray, and a world full of distractions that seek to draw us away from God. The lesson here is that we must not allow the temporary worldly things to overshadow our devotion to God. The focus of our worship should always remain on God alone, the Creator who gives us life and sustains us. This story also teaches the importance of keeping our faith pure. We must guard against the subtle pull of materialism, fame, or any form of idolatry that may arise. Whatever good things we have in life, they come from God, and we must recognize His hand in every blessing. Let us continue to live humbly, reminding ourselves daily of God's presence and never allowing anything to take His rightful place in our hearts. The story of Moses' death and the hidden location of his burial is not just a historical account, but a profound lesson for believers throughout time. The Lord's decision to conceal the body of Moses reflects not only the deep love God had for His servant, but also His profound wisdom in protecting His people from the dangers of idolatry. The temptation to worship what is created rather than the Creator is an issue that has plagued humanity since the beginning of time, and it is one of the key reasons why Satan fought so desperately for Moses' body. Idolatry is a subtle yet powerful force that can creep into the hearts of even the most devout people. It doesn't always manifest in the form of golden statues or carved images. Often, it takes on more insidious forms, such as the worship of human beings, ideas, or even objects that are not inherently evil but can become idols when placed above God. This is why God had to act swiftly and decisively in hiding Moses' body, so that the people would not be led astray by misplaced adoration. The Israelites' history, from their struggle with the golden calf to their later idol worship in the Promised Land, shows how easily the human heart can be swayed toward idolatry. The danger wasn't just the worship of Moses himself, but what that worship could represent: the turning away from the living, sovereign God. In essence, this story highlights the ever-present battle between the created and the Creator. Human nature has always been inclined to elevate what is visible, tangible, and finite, things that can be touched, seen, or worshipped. But the Lord, in His infinite wisdom, chose to keep Moses' body hidden so that it would not become an object of idol worship. This act of divine protection underscores the importance of recognizing that no matter how extraordinary a person may be, they are not the ultimate source of life and power. All things, whether great leaders, gifted individuals, or any remarkable creation, find their purpose only in relation to the Creator. The Archangel Michael's involvement in guarding Moses' body also teaches us something vital about spiritual warfare. When Michael contended with Satan over the body of Moses, He didn't engage in a direct rebuke. Instead, he said, "The Lord rebuke you." This shows the humility and obedience that even the highest-ranking angel demonstrated. Michael, despite his immense power, knew that judgment was not for him to deliver. It was the Lord's prerogative. This act of humility on Michael's part is a powerful reminder that no matter how powerful or righteous we may feel in our own abilities, true authority belongs to God alone. Michael's restraint also serves as a model for how we should approach conflict, especially spiritual conflict. In our lives, we often face situations where we are wronged or attacked. The human instinct may be to strike back or take matters into our own hands. But the lesson from Michael's interaction with Satan is clear. Vengeance is not ours to take. When we face injustice, whether personal or global, we are called to surrender our desire for retribution and allow God to handle the judgment. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent to injustice. Rather, it means we trust in God's sovereignty and His perfect justice. The statement, "The Lord rebuke you," is also a powerful declaration of God's supreme power over evil. Satan, despite his many schemes and deceptions, is not outside of God's control. In fact, he is ultimately subject to God's will. The archangel Michael, the warrior angel who has fought many battles on behalf of God's people, understood this truth better than anyone. His statement is not just a rebuke against Satan, but a declaration that God is in control of all things, even in the spiritual realm. Michael's refusal to engage in direct condemnation of Satan serves as a reminder to believers that God's authority supersedes all other powers, including those of evil. This concept of God's ultimate authority is central to the Christian faith. It speaks to the reality that we are not in control of the world's injustices or the evil forces at work in our lives. But God, in His omnipotence, is. When we face trials or opposition, we must remember that God is the one who holds the ultimate authority over our lives and circumstances. He sees all, knows all, and has the power to bring about justice in His perfect timing. Our role is to trust in His sovereignty and to act in obedience to His commands, knowing that He will ultimately prevail over all evil. Moreover, Michael's interaction with Satan over Moses' body also brings to light the importance of spiritual discernment. Michael didn't rush into battle but took a step back, allowing God to handle the situation. As Christians, we are called to have discernment in the battles we face, understanding that not every issue requires immediate confrontation or force. Sometimes, the most powerful response is to leave the matter in God's hands, trusting in His perfect judgment. This requires faith, patience, and a deep understanding of God's character. In the end, the story of Moses' hidden burial and the heavenly battle over his body is a powerful reminder of the dangers of idolatry and the importance of recognizing God's supreme authority. It challenges us to examine our own lives and ask ourselves, what do we worship? What holds a place of reverence and adoration in our hearts? Is it God alone, or have we allowed other things to take His place? As we reflect on this story, we are called to reaffirm our commitment to worshiping the Creator above all else. We must constantly guard our hearts against the temptation to elevate anything or anyone to the status of idol. Whether it's a person, an achievement, or an object, anything that takes our focus away from God can become an idol in our lives. Let us be vigilant, keeping our eyes fixed on the One who created us, the one who alone deserves our ultimate devotion. The story of Michael, Satan, and the body of Moses is a reminder that the battle for our hearts and minds is ongoing, but it also assures us that God is always in control. His will always prevail, and His justice will be carried out in perfect timing. Our role is to trust, to submit, and to keep our hearts focused on Him alone, knowing that He is both our Creator and our ultimate Judge. The ongoing battle for the hearts and minds of humanity is something we must take seriously, as it has profound implications for how we live and worship. The story of Moses' death and burial serves as a powerful reminder that our worship must be directed only to God and not diverted to anything else. God, in His infinite wisdom, chose to hide the body of Moses not just to prevent idol worship, but to remind us of something far more significant: the danger of allowing anything, even something as righteous and revered as Moses, take the place of God in our lives. This lesson is particularly relevant in today's world, where idolatry often takes more subtle forms than it did in ancient Israel. While people may no longer build golden calves or carve images of gods, the human tendency to idolize something, whether it's a person, a career, a lifestyle, or even a technology, remains as powerful as ever. Idolatry is not just about worshiping false gods, it's about giving something the ultimate place in our hearts and minds. A place that should belong only to God. Anything we put before God becomes an idol. It could be wealth, success, popularity, or even the approval of others. The allure of these things can draw us away from the true purpose of our lives, to glorify God and live according to His will. In many ways, the struggle with idolatry is the struggle to maintain a proper perspective on life itself. The Israelites, as we see throughout their history, frequently lost sight of the importance of worshiping God alone. They were often drawn to the things of this world, sometimes due to their immediate needs, sometimes because of their longing for something tangible to hold on to. But the hidden burial of Moses is a constant reminder that the created things, no matter how great, holy, or mighty, are not worthy of worship. It is God alone who is deserving of our adoration and devotion. This truth is foundational to the Christian faith. We are called to love the Lord with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. The greatest commandment is not just a suggestion. It's a commandment meant to preserve our hearts from the idols of this world. And while it's easy to point fingers at people who worship statues or follow after false teachings, the real challenge is recognizing the subtle idols that take root in our own hearts. The greatest idol is often not something external, but something internal: the desire for control, for approval, for power, for comfort. When these desires are placed above God's will, they become idols in our lives. The battle over Moses' body also serves as a stark reminder of the battle we face in the spiritual realm. While we may not physically see Satan fighting over our lives, the forces of evil are constantly at work, trying to lead us away from our true purpose. Satan's desire to control and mislead is relentless, but it is also a battle that is already won. Christ's victory over sin and death on the cross has secured the ultimate triumph over the forces of darkness. We are not fighting for victory, but from a place of victory. This truth should embolden us to stand firm in our faith, to resist the enemy's temptations, and to trust in the power of God to overcome anything that seeks to steal our hearts away from Him. In the same way Michael refused to take matters into his own hands when contending with Satan, we too are called to resist the urge to fight spiritual battles in our own strength. Michael's restraint, his decision to leave judgment to God, teaches us the importance of trusting in God's sovereignty. Often we feel the need to act immediately, to take matters into our own hands when we face injustice, difficulty, or temptation. But the example of Michael shows that there is strength in waiting for God's judgment. His timing is perfect, and His ways are higher than ours. In our lives, this means we should refrain from rushing into situations with our own solutions, but instead rely on God to guide us and provide the right response. It is also worth noting that even in the midst of battle, the focus must remain on God. The reason Michael did not directly rebuke Satan but said, "The Lord rebuke you," is because it was not about Michael's power or authority. It was about God's. Michael, though powerful, understood that ultimate authority resides with God alone. This is an important reminder for us. In every spiritual battle, we must remember that our strength and success do not come from ourselves, but from God. We are called to submit to His will and trust in His ability to defeat the forces of evil on our behalf. The battle is not ours to fight alone. When we consider our own struggles with sin, temptation, or spiritual warfare, it's easy to become discouraged. We see the challenges in front of us and feel inadequate to overcome them. But the story of Michael's confrontation with Satan reminds us that we do not fight alone. We are equipped with the power of God, who is more than able to handle whatever obstacles we face. Michael's words, "The Lord rebuke you," should be our declaration in the face of every temptation or trial. We don't have to rely on our own strength or wisdom. We can call upon God, trusting that He will deliver us from the enemy's schemes. Another aspect of this story is how it highlights the deep protection God offers to His people. The Lord's decision to hide Moses' body was not just for Moses' sake, but for the sake of the people of Israel, and by extension, for us today. God's protection is often unseen, just as Moses' burial place was hidden from view. Many times we may not see the full extent of God's protective hand over our lives. Yet, like the hidden burial of Moses, God is constantly at work behind the scenes, shielding us from the dangers of idolatry and the traps of the enemy. When we face trials or setbacks, it can be easy to believe that God is absent or unconcerned. But the story of Moses' hidden burial is a reminder that God's protection often works in ways that are not immediately visible to us. Sometimes, God withholds things from us, whether it's our own desires, the recognition we think we deserve, or the things we crave in the world, because He knows that they would lead us astray. In those moments when we feel frustrated or confused, we must trust that God is watching over us, protecting us from harm, and guiding us toward what truly matters. Ultimately, the story of Moses' death, his hidden burial, and the dispute between Michael and Satan is a reminder of the importance of keeping our hearts pure and focused on God alone. As we walk through life, we must continually evaluate what we are worshiping, what we are giving our attention and affection to. Are we truly focused on God, or have we allowed other things to take His place? In our world, filled with distractions, it is easy to let our focus slip, but God calls us to remember that only He is worthy of our highest devotion. As we face the challenges of life, we must do so with the confidence that God is in control. He is our protector, our judge, and our Savior. When we trust in Him and surrender our lives to His will, we can be certain that He will guide us, protect us from idolatry, and give us the strength to resist the enemy. Just as Michael fought on behalf of Moses' body, we are called to stand firm, trusting in God's sovereignty and remembering that He alone is the source of our strength and hope. As we continue to reflect on the story of Moses' death and the heavenly dispute over his body, it becomes clear that this biblical account offers much more than a historical narrative. It serves as a profound spiritual teaching about God's sovereignty, the dangers of idolatry, and the importance of placing our complete trust in Him. By hiding Moses' body, God not only protected His people from the temptation of idolatry, but also set a crucial precedent for how we should approach our own faith and relationship with Him. Idolatry, as we've discussed, is not always about worshiping physical statues or objects. It is often about elevating anything, even something good, to the place of ultimate importance in our hearts. In today's world, the forms of idolatry might be far more subtle, but just as dangerous. We live in a culture that often exalts material success, power, fame, and personal achievement, These things can easily become idols when we place our trust and hope in them. The danger, as God knew with Moses, is that when we focus on the created rather than the Creator, we distort our purpose and lose sight of the true meaning of life. Moses, as an extraordinary leader and servant of God, was a man whose life and actions had significant weight and meaning. His journey and relationship with God were foundational to the faith of Israel. But, in God's eyes, Moses was still just a servant, a faithful instrument through which God's power and will were displayed. This distinction is crucial because it reinforces the message that no matter how great a person is in the eyes of the world, they are still finite, limited, and ultimately not worthy of worship. The Creator alone deserves our adoration, reverence, and complete submission. This truth should deeply shape our own lives and how we view the world around us. Every human achievement, no matter how impressive, is still part of a larger story that revolves around God's glory and purpose. Whether we are leaders, teachers, parents, or workers, we are simply vessels through which God works to fulfill His will. It is not our abilities, our accomplishments, or our recognition that should be worshipped, but the one who has empowered us to fulfill our calling. The story of Michael's role in guarding Moses' body also brings to the forefront the concept of spiritual humility and submission to God's will. Even the mighty archangel Michael, a warrior angel with the authority to oppose the forces of evil, knew that ultimate authority belonged to God alone. Michael's decision to speak on behalf of God rather than take matters into his own hands is a vital lesson in spiritual warfare. It is a lesson that can help us navigate our own battles, not by relying on our own strength or wisdom, but by submitting fully to God's plans and trusting in His perfect justice. When we encounter difficult situations in life, especially those that feel unjust or overwhelming, our first instinct might be to fight back, to demand justice, or to take control of the situation. But Michael's response to Satan in the heavenly dispute is a powerful reminder that there are times when our greatest strength is in surrendering to God. Instead of reacting out of anger or frustration, we are called to trust in God's timing and judgment, knowing that He will bring about what is just in His perfect way. This requires immense faith and trust, something that is often difficult for us to embrace in the heat of the moment. Moreover, Michael's action also highlights the importance of recognizing that spiritual battles are not always physical. We are in a constant spiritual struggle against the forces of darkness, whether it be temptation, evil influences, or the snares of the enemy. However, just as Michael didn't engage Satan directly but deferred to God's authority, we too are called to stand firm in our faith and resist the devil by submitting to God. As James 4:7 reminds us, "Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Our resistance to evil is not through our own power, but through our submission to God's greater power. This submission to God's will doesn't mean that we're passive in the face of adversity. It means that we actively seek His guidance, follow His word, and trust that He will fight on our behalf. Spiritual battles are often won not through forceful action or our own cleverness, but through reliance on God's strength, wisdom, and timing. Just as Michael called upon the Lord to rebuke Satan, we too should call upon God for His strength and wisdom in facing our own spiritual challenges. Another important lesson to draw from the story of Moses and Michael is the understanding that God is always working, even when we do not see it. The very fact that God hid Moses' body from the Israelites shows how God's protection often works in ways that are invisible and mysterious to us. It is easy for us to feel abandoned or disheartened when things are not going as we expect. We may wonder why God seems silent or distant in moments of difficulty. However, the hidden burial of Moses demonstrates that God's protection and providence are often unseen but always at work. Just because we cannot see God's hand in a particular situation does not mean He is not actively involved in guarding, guiding, and protecting us. God's hidden work is also a reminder that His plans are far beyond our understanding. We may not always understand why things happen the way they do, or why certain prayers seem unanswered. Yet we can trust that God's purposes are always good, always aimed at bringing about His glory and the good of His people. When we look at the bigger picture, we can see that God's decisions, like the hiding of Moses' body, are ultimately for our protection and spiritual growth. This hidden work of God extends to our own lives. We may never fully understand why certain doors are closed or why certain prayers seem unanswered, but we can trust that God, in His infinite wisdom, knows what is best for us. His plan for our lives is perfect, and we are called to submit to His will, knowing that He is working in ways we cannot always see. This requires faith and patience, qualities that are often developed through the very trials we face. It is in those moments of waiting and trusting that we grow in our relationship with God, learning to depend on Him more deeply. The story of Moses' hidden burial also invites us to consider how we handle the things in our own lives that we hold dear. Just as Moses was not to be worshipped, the things we value, whether relationships, achievements, or possessions, must never take the place of God in our hearts. We are called to steward these things with humility, recognizing that they are gifts from God meant to serve His purposes, not idols to be worshipped. As we continue to walk in faith, we must remember the ultimate truth. God is the Creator, and He alone is worthy of our worship. Moses' life, though extraordinary, was not about Moses. It was about the God who called him. And our lives, too, are not about us, but about the God who made us and calls us to live for His glory. When we keep our focus on Him and submit to His will, we can trust that He will lead us through every challenge and protect us from the temptations that seek to draw us away from Him. Let us, like Michael, rely on God's power and not our own, trusting that His will shall be done and His glory revealed in every part of our lives.